Thank you so much, Lucy. I hope you can hear me well. I'm just checking for answers. You probably can hear me. Yes, thank you so much. So welcome, everyone. It's really nice to see so many of you here. And I'd like to thank Lucy for inviting me to do another webinar for you. So I will just close the chat box because I've been checking your messages. And today we will talk about reading, which is more than just a skill. And we will see how you can help your students grow with reading in lots of different ways, all right? So that's the big plan for today. I don't know if you know me at all or not, but currently I teach applied linguistics, multimodal translation, and academic writing at ELTE University in Budapest, Hungary. And I have a PhD in applied linguistics, but my specialty is visual narratives and museum education. And I worked a lot on the HELBLING Readers blog, and I also adapted novels, the novels 1984 and The Age of Innocence, which are both wonderful titles, I think. So I have a bit of a background in teaching. I worked in primary, secondary education as well, and right now I teach in teacher education and at BE and MA levels at university. All right, so today we will talk about reading. First, we will look at general big ideas about why reading is so important, which I am sure you are aware of already. But I think it's a really good idea to revise these benefits of reading so that you can actually sell it better to others and to your students. And then we will look at ways of integrating reading into your courses. I try to be as practical as possible here. And then we will look at 4 readers. I mean, we are not going to read 4 readers, but I will show you 4 readers that I'd like you to think about and 4 titles for today. And then we will, as I promised in the blurb, we will move from classroom reading tasks towards bigger reading projects. And we will see how you can actually adapt them. I'm not going to tell you what exactly you need to do in the classroom, because in teacher education, we like to say that you know your students best and your classrooms best. But I will show you lots of exercise ideas and activity ideas that you can then adapt and integrate into your own courses. So, why is reading so important? Reading as a core skill, as one of the traditional 4 skills, which we don't really define as 4 skills anymore because it's more like 5 skills or 6 skills even, with viewing and thinking and all sorts of bigger skills integrated. Reading is seen as an everyday task, so it's necessary for our students. They read every day, even if we like to say that students don't read today, they read all day. When they are scrolling, they are reading. The news and social media, they read instructions. We read for entertainment, like graphic novels, comic books and novels and websites. But reading is also an educational task, and we read in school. We read textbooks, tests, exams, and so on. So it's quite a complex skill, just at the lowest practical level. And we know that reading supports knowledge building, both formal and informal, emotional growth, social skills development, critical literacy development, if done correctly and with a lot of engagement and interaction, cultural learning and attention, and memory training. So if anybody asks you why you want to do so much reading and story time in your classes, then you can just have all these answers ready for them, that when I teach reading, when I read in class, these are all the things that I am doing. We as teachers, I think, want to first of all teach English as a lingua franca, because you cannot teach just one type of English and one variety of English. You are teaching lots of Englishes, and that's all right. And we teach culture also of all sorts of English-speaking cultures. We also want to teach critical thinking skills. We want to help students grow emotionally. We want our students to become autonomous learners. And we want our students to help them find a love of learning and reading. We want to fight all these 21st century threats on literacy and well-being. And as teachers, I think we feel responsible that we give some guidance to our students, even in matters that we feel probably lost sometimes in. And I think we want to have fun. Language teachers, I think that a lot of the times are taken for granted as like they teach only the language. But I think we all know that we teach so much more than just the language with its vocabulary and grammar, because through language, we teach lots of skills and we can give lots of knowledge to our students. So why do we still need to convince teachers, parents, students, directors to invest in reading? Good question. So we need to invest time and resources at home, in school, in the curriculum, in our minds. And I think that time and resources can both be managed. And I think that once we decide that we will just invest enough time in reading and give it lots of time and space, and then we will find ways of finding the resources on the internet, in school libraries, or by investing in book packages for our students. Everybody can find their own ways, I think. So when and how can we integrate more reading into our courses? Because we all know that they, like everyone, all the stakeholders, want us to invest in the whole learner and whole language development. But I also say that reading can actually fix it all, and it can have a lot more to contribute. So first of all, you need to decide your goal, I think. If you are preparing your students for simply an exam, then I think they want immediate results. And it's a bit like training. You are training for an exam, for example, in a 10-hour intensive course with targeted exercises. That's what I did quite a lot when I prepared students for CA or, I don't know, B1, B2, C1 level exams. You know the rules of the game, you know how to help students pass the test, and you train them. So it's not a big question how you do it, because each exam has specific expectations, multiple choice, gap fill, and so on. And you can help students actually without really giving them much knowledge of the language. The exam strategies will help you. Now there's the other side, which is more about language and literacy and the fun part of reading, which is a longer process, which involves engagement, which is a kind of cultivation, not just simply training. You, as a teacher, become the cultivator of knowledge and a kind of educated gaze and a critical thinker. And these longer reading projects have both targeted exercises in the classroom, but there are also exercises which build reading stamina and which help students grow beyond the classroom exercises and engage with reading on multiple levels. All this needs a lot of time. But we also know that teachers who invest in reading time win, and the consistent plan pays off. And it shows that you value reading, and successful reading programs integrate reading time. If you go on the HELBLING Readers blog, for example, you will see interviews with teachers who work with reading in primary, secondary, or in all sorts of levels. And you will see that they have a special plan, they have a project that they work on. Another thing is that students, even students coming from really good families, won't always have dedicated reading time at home. They might not even get enough time for reading, or they might not have enough books at home. And another thing is that just because they read really well in their first language, it doesn't mean that they are really interested in reading in their second language as well. And they might not be that confident to read in their second language. So how do we expect our students to read more and read more happily if we don't give them the time to do so? So by showing students that here you have 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 5 minutes of reading every week, for example, then you can actually help them realize that you value reading and they can value reading, because it's not just something that they should do only in their free time. So we need to integrate reading in the actual weekly plan that we are working with. That's what I'm saying. So related to this, there's another issue. Like, we also know that not all teachers are 100% free to decide when and how they want to teach in their courses. Because if you teach in a traditional school, then you might be handed over a kind of course plan or teaching plan that you need to stick to. There's a course book to finish. But I also feel that teachers always find a way in every school. You can find a way to have more reading time in your sessions. And I think this is again where I point towards successful reading programs, is that check out all these interviews where teachers explain how they, even in the most disadvantaged schools, they have managed to integrate more reading into their teaching. And I'm sure I don't need to remind you, but let me remind you that you teach the students, you yourself, and it's not the coursebook who teaches them. So I remember being a secondary school teacher, and the expectations were like, I need to run through the course plan, because what if I don't finish everything by the end of the year? But then where is the fun and where is the real experience? Because still, what I really remember from my own education are the stories and the songs and the real experiences. And I also know why I remember that, because it was story-based. So a good way to start planning ahead is by making a reading plan. So you decide the time and frequency of your reading project. It's up to you. You know best how much time you might be able to dedicate to it. Define your learning goals through reading. Design a reading project. Choose books for your project. Of course, you can't let your students choose totally freely in a primary school, because you want some kind of understanding among the students and you. So pre-select a lot of titles for them they can choose from, and also different book types. They can be graded readers, magazines, comic books, graphic novels, websites. Then you can put together a nice little reading package for them and yourself. So time-based approaches, I keep saying this to every teacher when I talk to teachers, is that ideally, I would dedicate a whole course to teaching, and I know it's idealistic and it's not always possible, but maybe in a summer course or in a holiday course, you can play with this idea. Or you can have weekly reading sessions in which you have a set of stories selected for the course, and you read several books every week or every 2 weeks. You decide how often you can integrate one reading lesson. You can do block reading, for example, right before the holidays, right before the summer holidays or the winter holidays, or before Christmas. You read 1 or 2 books when you have some free time, or you feel that your students are feeling more tired or not really interested anymore in course books, but you still want something meaningful. Or you can have an extensive reading project in the form of a book club or a reading circle, or you just read here and then whenever you feel have some free time. So you can be really flexible about it, but the idea is that you keep going, and you try building reading stamina in your students all through the weeks, and it is recurring as well. So questions to ask here is like, how can we go beyond simple comprehension and exam preparation if we want to work with more reading? What skills focus can we integrate into our reading programs? And how can we make this happen in our everyday teaching practice? So for this reason, I selected 4 readers for you. The 2 upper ones, the Phoenix and the Red Carpet and the Carpet, is an A1 level book. In 1984 is A2B1. Sherlock and the Stolen Jewels are A1, A2, and Wuthering Heights A2B1. There's a special reason for each of these titles. The Phoenix is part of a series, and 5 Children and It is the first title, which is still an A1 in our graded reader series. The Sherlock Holmes and the Stolen Jewels, there are lots of Sherlock titles, and I think that students will never get tired of Sherlock Holmes and detective stories. And I think that these are really nice Christmas stories as well. So if you are looking for a nice Christmas story, then there you go. You can go with The Stolen Jewels. 1984 is, first of all, I worked on this for a long year, and I really loved the story in the sense that I think it's a beautifully written and eye-opening and shocking narrative, which resonates well. As we know, it's popular to say that it resonates well with what is happening in society and with the internet today. And Wuthering Heights, it's because a new film adaptation is coming out soon. So I'm sure that students will see it a lot in movie trailers and so on. So I think we need to grab every opportunity from popular culture to promote classic titles. So there you go. I think Wuthering Heights is one of these, with several film adaptations. Actually, there was another one in 2011, I think. So these are the four titles, but of course you can experiment with any other title that you are interested in. And I think that the activities that I will show you can be adapted for any of the titles that you choose from any bookshelf. So let's get started. Classroom reading tasks. So the main idea in classroom reading tasks, I think, is that you choose a title and you say that we will read this book together. We will talk about this book together and we will read a bit in class and then you can read more home. But I think that to get students started, I was given books, for example, just handed books to read at home. Sometimes I read it, sometimes not. But I always miss the follow-up. So either an introduction or a follow-up or both, ideally, should be there. So students really feel that they can talk about the book itself. So we are working in a cycle now, and we are saying that, okay, we are starting with building knowledge about the topic. We talk about the topic, we read a bit about background information. In the Helping Readers, you will see these project pages and dossiers in the books, which will help you actually find out a little bit about the background of the story and the author itself. You can listen to bits of the story, listen to interviews with people about it. If the students have that level, you can, with lower level students, you can look at the illustrations and ask students for their emotional response or for just simple descriptions, or watch videos, for example, trailers or retellings of the story or film adaptations. But the main idea is that you build some kind of knowledge about the story itself. Students don't go just blind in to read the story. And then I think the next step is to learn about the setting. It's a great thing that each story takes place in time and space with their own social and cultural issues. So you will always find interdisciplinary links with history and geography and culture and science. So this step, or when you want to explore the background and learn about the story, and I think it's great fun for the teacher as well to engage with these stories again or just as a new project. It's a great idea if you want to set up bigger projects, as we will see later. So, for example, with these four titles, if you read the Phoenix, then you can talk about the Phoenix, the actual creature, and other legendary animals and legends. When you go to Sherlock, then why don't you just start talking about London and look at Victorian London, images of Victorian London? You will find great activity resources for this on the HELBLING blog. It's a kind of literary time travel series that you can find there with lots of exercises. And if some students are interested in the science of it and some others in the cultural part aspect, and then I would encourage students to learn a bit more about the two big jewels that are in the two stories. So what are they like? Where do they come from? The chemical description, and then just also look at the mineral, and then just look at the cultural impact of these jewels. When you go to 1984, then of course you can just talk about this will be with higher level or even young adult students or teenagers, talk about what the dystopia is and dystopian fiction, and then talk about the social aspect of the whole issue, and talk about like who is Big Brother, are we being watched, how are we being watched, who what is a telescreen in the story and what is the internet doing today, and social media in our lives. And then with the Wuthering Heights, again, you will find a really nice activity and lesson plan there about the literary Yorkshire. Just travel to England, find out about the landscape and the places, and engage students in describing the characters simply by looking at the images or watch some film trailers and ask students to describe the characters. But of course, you can make up your own ideas about like how you could approach and engage with the stories. Now, another idea is that you can work with the language before reading or after reading. A lot of the time I hear that students and teachers complain that, yes, I like to integrate more reading into my courses, but how can I teach the past tense if I only read? Of course, you can teach all sorts of grammar conventions. I don't like to call them rules, grammar conventions and grammatical structures through reading, especially with all sorts of graded readers. You will have before and after reading activities which introduce new vocabulary and focus on typical grammatical features, which will then help you actually use bits of the story, highlight grammatical structures, practice them. And most of the readers, especially all the helping readers, will have some sort of exam preparation tasks as well, so you could actually link it well there. And remember that stories help you build vocab and learn, understand grammar in context. That's something that hardly happens if you are using only grammar exercises. I don't know if you have been asked to translate a single word. You cannot translate a single word without context. You cannot explain grammar without context. When students ask you whether the past perfect or the past simple is the correct solution in a sentence, you cannot tell them which one is right or not if it's decontextualized. You know what I mean. So this will help students really understand the deeper meaning of grammar and how they can make sense with stories and understand vocab and grammar much better. So for example, with the Phoenix, you will see that there are the typical matching exercises, image-based exercises, and in exercise 4, you can listen to an extract from a story, and then you can actually practice some listening here. And you can also have some speaking exercises. So this happens all before you actually start reading, and you can dedicate half a lesson to just dealing with all these activities. Sorry. And within the text, if you decide to read like chapter 1 of the novel or chapter 2 of the reader, you see that as you are reading it, there are these little boxes which you could actually make up on your own, because it says that when it's very old, talking about the phoenix, they say that when it's very old, it makes a fire and burns itself. There you go, a really hard, actually, grammar exercise for your students at this level, A1, A2 level, to understand what a reflexive pronoun is. So there they see it in context, and I think if they see it through the Phoenix, they will always remember it. Now, if you go into 1984, then you will have all these great words like brunch and hangry and other words that will, and all these word formation portmanteau words, which will really have your students make up new words, maybe understand the deeper meaning of words. So this is again a higher B1, B1 plus. I would even read it with B2 level students, I think, because they would enjoy the topic. And you can have a lot of lexical work put in before reading. So I would start with that. Now, more about dedicated reading time. Now that we talked about vocab and grammar, I think that the drop everything and read sessions are amazing. This is the idea that there should be at least 5 or 10 or 15 minutes of reading time when you just actually reward your students with these kind of dear sessions where they can, I used to do this on every Friday, when I said to the students, now you can just stop and read. and they can read anything in any body position they like, as long as it's safe, and then just read for the fun of it. But you can also read aloud in class. I don't know what's trendy today, because teaching trends come and go, but I think that we can all agree that reading aloud actually makes sense. It's something to do with the attention, this kind of shared attention, and you are focusing on the same text. If it's you who is reading to the students, even just a paragraph, you can actually model pronunciation, intonation, and interpretation through reading. Even at university, I do this. Sometimes we read the abstract together and analyze it and understand it together. The function of the sentences or difficult words you can really talk about. So do reading aloud in the class, please. Focused reading. I don't know if students are used to working with books, finding the contents page, for example, or finding bits in the different ideas in the books. So I think that you can dedicate 5 minutes to becoming familiar with the features of the book. If you take a graded reader, you could say, here are the activities, here are the actual character pages, here you find the audio files. By the way, if you use graded readers from HELBLING, you will find all the audios on eZone in MP3 format. You look at the chapters, you look at the glossaries, reflection boxes, illustrations, and so on. Dedicated reading time can be in the form of focused reading. So one chapter for first impressions, you just read it together and just say, maybe you didn't understand everything at this point, but you just tell me how you feel. Is there a character you root for? Is there something you don't understand? And so on. And now I will show you something about focused reading in the sense of guiding questions and follow-up reflections, and especially on using the reflection boxes, because I think that's a great way of helping students become more interactive readers. Because that's where we are going, that we'd like our students to read, yes, but we also want them to read with a critical eye, and we want them to read probably with a pen or a pencil, or with just even their phones, taking photos of important words. So just taking notes, because when it comes to it, there's reading, and in academic settings or in educational settings, then there is reading, and it's followed up by note-taking and summarizing. We are heading towards that skill development set of skills. So you are having fun reading a nice story, but at the same time, you are also learning to become aware of words you don't understand, and you are also learning how to actually deal with these words and how to reflect on interesting parts of the story and how to enter into a dialogue. So when it comes to 1984, you look at the illustration, you can think about like, how might your students feel about it? There is a big poster on the wall, and then there is a lonely man walking up the stairs. He's not feeling very happy. So you read the first chapter, and I highlighted in yellow. Like, then you stop and you think about the telescreen. This way you are really stepping outside the story, and you are trying to make connections with the then of the story and the now of reading time. So this is a kind of critical reflection, practicing critical reflection on what you are reading. So for example, here the idea of telescreens was invented by George Orwell. Telescreens are television, security cameras, and microphones all at the same time. In the book, they are used for controlling people. What things control us or collect our data today? So this is an easy, quite obvious way of making connections between the book and our lives. And what I highlighted in purple is the glossary itself. So you can, as you are reading, you can stop and then tell students to check the meanings of the words, which are sometimes defined visually, and then sometimes they are just defined in simple words. The same goes for the Phoenix. Here you also have a reflection box. Since it's a lower level story and it's a children's story, We are dealing with simple ideas. So you read about this golden egg, and then you think about wishes. So when you wish for something, you want it to be real. What do you wish for? Again, it just, you stop and connect with your personal life. And there again, you have the glossary for the students that you can discuss together. And I think if you do just one chapter together in class, then students will find it really easy to deal with this on their own. Now, working with the illustrations, it's always a really nice thing to, I think, work with a helping reader, because you get the most beautiful illustrations ever. So you can talk about the cover. Students will tell you what they think might happen. Should you judge a book by its cover? I think you should, or you should not. You can talk about that. Talk about the character sheets. Each reader will have a character double page. It's good for physical description practice, or retelling the story through the characters. Or you can just browse the book and talk about the illustrations, observe, describe, and retell. The illustrations in graded readers are always designed really carefully so that they actually support reading comprehension, but they might also give you some kind of atmospheric, emotional kind of mood, which is also really nice to get. I think with the stories, it really boosts the imagination of the students. All right. So if you go with guided reading, you can read a chapter together. And again, I mentioned it earlier that with guided reading, I think we need to teach students how to deal with unknown words. When we read a chapter page together, I would just say that some of the words that they don't know, they can skip. And it's for the kind of fluency idea, that you don't have to stop and worry about every word. If a word comes back again and again and you still don't understand it, then you stop and check it in the dictionary. Otherwise, you show students how they can guess the meaning from context, or how they can check the glossary if they don't know the meaning of a word. Practice interacting with the text, as I said, note-taking and asking questions, predict what comes next, and start a reading journal. Again, this is something that can be done in classroom-based reading practice, that you show students what they can write in a reading journal, just like the plot summary, personal reflections, questions that I have, words I don't understand, comments on the characters, funny comments on the characters, and so on. So whatever you like, but I think it's really interesting to have a reader in your hand and have a notebook where you can actually write about it, or write on the margin if it's your book. But I don't know how much you support writing in books or with a pen or a pencil, but why not? They can highlight and underline and make comments as well if it's their own book. So for example, about the character pages, I mentioned before, here are a couple of ideas and examples. You can just simply go with describing where they are, what they look like. Do they seem like a happy family? When do you think this is happening? How do they know that it's an old story or a new story, modern story, and so on? These illustrations are particularly beautiful, I think. Then you go with, as I said, with checking interesting information or practicing dealing with unknown words. Camden Town, London. Nursery floor. What's a nursery? I'm not sure that students will understand that, so you can talk about that. Or I highlighted in yellow a sentence talking about the big golden egg that the children find, is that in fact it looks like an egg with fire inside. That's something that I would ask students to draw and illustrate. And again, looks like is an interesting expression that you might want your students to understand and maybe practice. So when they imagine a big golden egg, it looks like an egg with fire inside, or it looks like a ball with fire inside, or they can compare it to other things. So these are just a couple of ideas again. Wait a minute. Then you go to 1984. Here again, it's a higher level story. It's more realistic. I think that the style here matches the atmosphere of the story. You can describe what the people look like, who wears what sort of clothing, and what the city looks like in this dystopia. It's not very positive, of course, but that's what the story is like. And here there are a couple of things that I highlighted. Of course, you can just read the page together, understand what's going on, where are we, what's happening, who is the main character. There is this man walking up the stairs, 45-year-old man. Here, the hyphenated 45-year-old is a really good grammar practice, I think. Like, why do we write it this way? Or you go with the sentence, Winston turned the volume down, but there was no way of turning it off completely. So what's the difference between turning something down, the volume down, or turning it off? Here you can practice phrasal verbs. There you go, you have your grammar and vocabulary exercises. And then there is the last sentence I highlighted. You never knew for sure when you were being watched by the thought police. We are in B1, B2. We could be going, I think, into B2 as well with the students, but with the B1 level students, they already know the passive voice, and you can practice different passive structures here with them. So I showed this for the grammar and for the vocabulary awareness exercises. Now, we said before that when we are reading, we want our students to start note-taking and summarizing. So you can go with the traditional 100-word summary of the chapter of the whole story. But you can also ask students to write visual summaries. Some of them might know storyboarding or are really good at drawing. So why not encourage them to draw what they saw, maybe sketch it on paper. A map summary, if possible, not all stories will afford this, but you can track the movements of the characters. I think that Sherlock Holmes stories are especially good for like tracking. We have tracked some Sherlock characters in London, marked them on the map, and saw where they moved around in the city. Or when somebody travels around the world or travel from one region to the other. Here's an example for you: The Call of the Wild. You could just look at the map and see the map. Jack London story I'm talking about. You can look at how you can get from San Francisco to Yukon Territory. So that's a beautiful trip to check out on the map. But there are many other stories which are really nice to actually check on the map and then summarize what happened here and there. Timeline of key points. Students just can draw a timeline and say this happened first, and I select 5 more important events and I just create a timeline of it. Mind map summary map. This works really well also with my own students actually. When they don't understand the text, I ask them to just explain the story in a mind map. These are the main characters. This is what happened here. These are the key elements, and they build a big like visual, not a summary in the sense of an illustration or creative storyboarding, but like a big mind map summary of the whole text. And I think that's a really good exercise for interpretation and then for retelling and critical understanding of the story. So go with summary writing techniques and teach students how to do this in the classroom. Listening strategies. As I said, all of these readers are fully recorded, so use them, and I think we should use them in the classroom as much as possible, because there comes a new skill, listening. You can just listen in the classroom, ask students to reflect on what they heard after the first chapter, just listen and take notes, then listen and discuss, and so on. So you can play with the audio recordings in many different ways. In-class creative response tasks are also, I think, can be very popular. You can create it's still a summary, but I didn't put it among the summary exercises because I think it's nice to have a character-based summary. Retell the story from a character's perspective. Maybe you like one character in the story, so try to imagine how they saw the story. Or how do I feel about this? Again, we say that in literature we like to be sometimes a bit emotionally more connected. So students can just write down what they feel and think about the story. Audio summary. Why not bring in a new skill? You have already use speaking to discuss, to reflect, and so on. So why not just ask students to create a 30-second or a 1-minute spoken summary of the chapter or of the book and send it to you. So this way they can practice not only summarizing but audio speaking skills as well. And now on to bigger projects before we run out of time. Reading journal. I mentioned that it's a good idea to set up a reading journal in class, so like teach students how they can write a reading journal. So you start it in class and ask students to keep a journal. That can be an ongoing project, and how proud they will be at the end of the year to see how many stories they have read. If you want to read more about this idea, go and check out the QR code, which will take you to the blog on keeping a reading journal. So you can just learn a bit more about what they are and how you can set them up. You can focus on themes in bigger projects as well. So the most traditional project all students and teachers, I think, like is poster design when it comes to reading. So you can say that one group of students will work on the setting, somebody else will work on the characters, and somebody else will, or some other group will work on the plot. And there you can put even 3 nice posters together dedicated to the story that you have read, and you can start collecting all these stories in class when students have prepared that. For more on this, you could check out even reading circle different roles, where you will have a lot more focus on different areas that you can explore in stories. Like somebody could look after the vocabulary or interesting grammar, cultural background, and so on. But with teenagers, I think that research skills, building research skills is also a really good idea. So you could just ask students to research a theme or create a poster or a presentation by theme. We can mean that even like communication in the age of innocence and 19th century New York. Or you could just say, if you are reading, as I mentioned before, Jack London, or you are reading Wuthering Heights, then with Jack London, it could be nature and the Yukon Territory and gold. And with Wuthering Heights, it could be difficult relationships, newcomers in the family, and how to deal with relationship issues. So through the novel itself, so you can explore that. Or another presentation, something that we kind of introduced earlier, is the then and now in the story and in our world. But I think it's especially interesting to see, like, where does the story take place? What were the rules? What were the conventions? What were the cultural norms back then? And how have things changed? Or how is it represented in a dystopia? And how is it in real life? How would a detective go on about finding stolen jewels today, and how did Sherlock do it? So you can approach these things from a more practical perspective as well, and make these real life connections through a presentation. But if you want to find out more about theme-based lessons, we have a whole collection of them with actually project pages as well. So just scan the QR code if you want to see that, and you can go on the blog and check them out. Now, here are some examples. There are these fact files which will work really well with theme and research ideas. So here you can talk about mythology, the phoenix, fantasy, mythical animals, and so on. And students will know lots of mythical animals and birds and others from history and from different cultures. Or connected to the phoenix and the carpet. After reading project can be plan a magic carpet day. Imagine you have a magic carpet and 3 wishes. What would you do? So here you are guided through a whole kind of creative session for a theme-based lesson. With 1984, well, there you enter a really interesting territory, the language of control, newspeak, and I think it will be really useful for teenagers, and they can really reflect on it. I think that today's teenagers are really sensitive, and they really pay attention, and they care about these things. So you can introduce how you can tweak language and how you can work with language and to manipulate and so on other people, and how you can use it for a more positive and more peaceful life. So here we are actually talking about really big things about the power of language and how language can actually change the way we think and feel, both negatively, and I think that they will understand how important it is to use language in a positive way. So this is the project planner, for example, for Sherlock Holmes that I mentioned here, but you can just have this. We have this on the blog for a lot of readers. Here you can put a cover or a story in the middle. You can sketch it yourself. Talk about who Sherlock is, detectives, what are the detectives, what are detectives like, what are the jewels, what was London like in the 19th century, newspapers and magazines, why are they important here, what about markets, find out about markets in the story, disguise, what's disguise, how is it relevant in the story, and then find out about Sherlock Holmes in film and TV series. Students will probably have heard about different adaptations. If not, then you can just show them. Another option for bigger projects is like digital multimodal compositions. I think that writing is an important skill. We worked with writing before, like with the summary and note-taking and so on, and creative summary tasks. But a digital composition can work really well because it integrates digital skills and writing skills and language skills all together. So what you have here, like if your students are older or they can use video recording on their own or even with their parents actually at home, one nice exercise could be a video-based summary. Or you can really have a bigger project and create a radio play. And if you click on that or you scan that QR code, it will take you to dramatization. There were two teachers who shared their experiences about creating radio plays in class. And I am amazed by their work. And it integrates so many different skills that I think that this could be a whole year project or at least a semester long project for you. You can do that with primary students or even secondary school students. Slideshow-based compositions are easy, but students are really good, I think, at using all sorts of platforms to create beautiful slideshows, and I think they enjoy doing that. And slideshow to video is especially interesting. Now, if your students are older or they use social media, I'm informed everybody does, but still, if this is something that you support in school, probably with secondary or in private courses, then you could actually encourage students to create a TikTok video or an Instagram carousel or reel sort of post, which is like a summary for social media, which is a more realistic kind of task than just writing for the notebook in class. Of course, that's important, but this is a different approach. Then I think that with young adult and adult students, even with teenagers, you can encourage students to find content on social media about the theme of the story. There are lots of really good literary websites or cultural websites where they will talk about the stories that you read in class. Now, first you search social media for accounts which present the themes related to the stories in accessible ways, but then if you're working with high schoolers, ask them to bring the content to class and you analyze the content together. You check, is it real? Is it reliable? Is it appropriate? So that's how you teach critical literacy and critical digital literacy skills to your students, because they might bring all sorts of sources that are inappropriate, unreliable, and you can show them why they shouldn't trust that content at all. And then you could make connections among different themes and genres and setting. This is, again, a bigger project. For example, ask students to look for stories about difficult relationships. Wuthering Heights, imaginary creatures, the Phoenix, time travel, power and politics. Or look for similar genres, detective stories, literary genres we talk about here, dystopias and romances. Or look at books set in London, New York, and Scotland. So find some kind of connection. This is how they can actually expand their own bookshelves and look for more interesting books. So here, if you scan this, you will go to the On the Read series on the HELBLING Readers blog, where you have like a set of stories all set in London. Christmas Carol, Great Expectations, The Secret Agent, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So this is another way of going on about it, going on a literary tour. And probably this is our final idea for today. Work with film adaptations. This QR code will take you to film tie-ins. Watch the film, parts of the film, watch a scene in class, 2 minutes. Find the relevant passage in the book, compare the passage and the film scene or the little bit that you watch together, compare and reflect on the adaptation. Is it a modern or a traditional adaptation? And you can choose scenes for classroom viewing and then just analyzing and understanding what's going on. So if you are interested in this, you will find some worksheets, for example, for Wuthering Heights. This is based on the 2011 Boe adaptation. And I think you could use this as a model then to go on and compare it with further adaptations. So I think that's a really nice idea, but you can use the same idea, like how to compare the film and the novel for any kind of film adaptation that already exists. So I think our time will be up soon, but let me just finish. So this was my last bigger project idea for you. It might be a lot. Maybe you have been taking notes. So, but I'm sure you will be able to watch the webinar again if you are interested in any of the ideas. So let's see, how did we actually go beyond simple reading development? What have we talked about now? We said that in classroom reading, you can practice basic reading skills and writing skills, but then with writing skills, you can focus on note-taking and summarizing, which are new skills. You can connect speaking and listening skills. You can practice reflection, both critical and emotional responses to text. When you work with theme-based projects, you support the students' research skills, cultural development, interdisciplinary learning, and critical literacy. And with digital compositions, you do the same, creative and editing skills, and you are working on digital literacy. And you could just go on with the list and so on. So when you integrate reading, you actually integrate a lot more, and you give this whole big opportunity to the students to grow in many different ways. So here's a 6-point summary for you before we close for today. So have a collection of reasons to help everyone understand why you invest in reading. Have these reasons ready. Choose a plan and dedicate enough time to your plan. And just feel confident that it is worth it and you are doing the right thing and you will enjoy it and your students will enjoy it. Select titles both you and your students enjoy. Do some classroom-based reading. Choose 1 or 2 bigger projects. Don't try to do all of these ideas, please, because it's impossible. And make time for your own reading as well. And I know that's the hardest thing, but I think if you engage with the text first and you enjoy reading the text, then you can really sell it to the students and create really engaging activities based on the titles. So that's all for my ideas for today and some finishing slides. Coming soon, there will be 5 new HELBLING readers around the world in 80 days. Everybody loves this story. You can check Alice in Wonderland, but the new Alice Through the Looking Glass is coming out soon. A Study in Scarlet, a new Sherlock Holmes story. Everybody I think is familiar with The Time Machine and another science fiction. And Tess is coming out, and I think many of us love Thomas Hardy and his probably most famous novel. So these are the books to watch out for. And if you are interested in the HELBLING Readers blog in general, then go scan this QR code and it will take you to the blog. And finally, if you're interested in the whole HELBLING community and so on social media, then you can scan to join Facebook and other platforms. And you can find more on the HELBLING English website. And I think that's the email address you can contact if you have any questions. So thank you for your attention today. And thanks again, Lucy, for inviting me. It was amazing to be here. And I hope you found this useful and go and make reading happen. Thank you so much.
Nora, before you go, a huge thank you. You can hopefully see in the chat box, I mean, the messages are flooding in. We've had an ongoing debate throughout your talk, lots and lots of teachers giving their suggestions and talking about all of the amazing ideas that you've given, and lots of them asking if you could just go back and show the QR codes again. So while I'm just wrapping up, would you please just go back and show the QR codes again? And just, I want to reiterate to all of you that are still here with us, that you can find all of the materials that Nora mentioned, all of the teaching tips, how to set up a reading group. Somebody was asking about how to do that, lesson plans, a calendar each month with ideas, themes, topics, all of these ideas on the HELBLING Readers blog. I'm going to share the link for those of you that can't access the QR codes. I'm sharing the link in the chat again, and I will actually include it in the follow-up email that we send out to all of you so that you get it via Zoom. So Nora, thank you. Fantastic talk. Really engaging. Lots and lots of lovely feedback from the group we've had today. Just in case you didn't see in the chat earlier today, we had teachers from China, Azerbaijan, Nigeria, Iran, Mexico, Peru, Ecuador, Italy, UK, Romania. If I've missed your country, apologies. There were just so many, but really amazing to see the HELBLING community all joining in today. Thank you, everybody. It's been a really great session, and I look forward to seeing you, many of you, at next month's webinar as well. Thanks, Nora. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. Take care. See you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.